10 o'clock service. I want to start just by saying that last night was off the chart. So if you missed last night, usually by Monday morning we have everything posted that'll be out there. But if you missed it, you'll want to make sure you go back and listen to last night. So, Jonathan, I think you're on. Just put your mouth. Yeah, you're on. I can hear you. You should be good.
Testing.
Yeah, there you are. We're going to jump right in. I asked Jonathan when we were first interacted about this weekend just to get more of who he is and his story. And, Ron and I, we had lunch yesterday with Jonathan, and I'd love for you to just start by talking about your parents and kind of their journey of where they ended up meeting at Purdue University, but before they even got there and who they are. Go ahead and tell that.
Yeah. My mother's family comes from Russia. They came to America escaping the Tsar, they were killing the Jews at that time, at the turn of the century. My father was born in Germany. He was born in Germany when the year that Hitler just started to try to take over the government. 10 years later, Hitler became the Chancellor of Germany. So he watched this he was around 10 years old, and he watched as the beginning of the Holocaust, which the first thing was to dehumanize the Jews, first separate them from their professions. They couldn't work. He was separated from school. The Jewish children were separated, had to be in their own school. And he watches all these things happen. And then came Kristallnacht, which was the night when they really just ravaged everything Jewish. They destroyed synagogues. They destroyed Jewish businesses. They took Jewish people into concentration camps. First time. It was like 2 days where they just ravaged that. And so my father, actually, he went to school, and they said, go back home. And then this has all happened. And so at that point, my grandfather, his father, said, we have to get you out. The Jews of Germany, by that time, they knew something bad was coming. I mean, they could see it. But many of the doors were closed to escape because all the quotas, even in America, you couldn't get out pretty much. So, but then right after Kristallnacht, there were Christians and others who went to the government in England. They went to the government and said, we have to rescue Jewish children. We have to get them from Germany. And so what happened, this was called the Kindertransport, the children's transport, where they allowed Jewish children to get out. And so German Jewish people sought to get their children out. This is like 1938, 1939, just before really everything, the war. And
the war escalated, it was 41, right? Like
the war started in 39.
In 39.
America entered in 41. But the war started in 39. This is just before, I believe it's months before the war started. I mean, and the war started, we don't know they saved 10,000 Jewish children. My father was one of them. And they put him on a train, and, my grandfather said to my father, when he was saying, say goodbye to your mother, you may never see her again. And they said that, even though it was both of them, he ended up never seeing his mother again. She died of the stress. She had a heart attack because of everything that was happening. My grandfather stayed till 1941, getting other Jews out, and then he miraculously in 1941 to get out he got out, at the last minute. And my father was sent. They went to England, and actually in England, some Christians gave him a Bible in German, and he actually gave it to me, a New Testament, they gave it, and so in England, they were there for a time, and then the war broke out. And so the English government rounded up all the Germans, including the Jews and the Nazis and spies and other people, just everybody. And they sent them across the ocean, across the Atlantic, to a prisoner of war camp in Canada. So my father went on the boat. There were Jews and Nazis, and the boat before him that was sent was sunk, by the submarines, by the Germans as it went. So he went there. He ended up in Canada. He was in this prisoner of war camp. And then gradually the Canadian government realized that, these are not dangerous criminals, at least the Jewish people. Actually, the older Jewish prisoners taught the younger ones. Like there were professors that they used toilet paper, and they did classes and all this stuff like that. He ended up being sponsored by a Jewish family to get out. He went to college in Canada, Queen's University, and then graduated and came down to America to go for a doctorate in chemistry. He was a scientist. He went to Purdue, and there my mother was also going for a doctorate in chemistry, and they both met there. While he was in America, he met his father. His father had escaped, came to America. They reunited in America. They got married, had 3 children, 2 girls, and the youngest was a boy, and that's me.
Gosh, that is, and so by the time your great grandpa, or no, it'd have been your grandpa then, they didn't. So we're talking a year or two. No, we're talking years then. When your dad got out as a kid and then ended up at Purdue, we're talking years before he was reunited with his dad again.
Yeah, he did. When he was in England, he wrote, but
Yeah.
after that, you couldn't tell what was happening because my grandfather is traveling on another train to get out, and so I don't even know when he realized his grandfather had made it. There were relatives who of course did not make it.
Right.
He had friends and children in the city of Cologne who were in the Holocaust. I mean, most were gone.
Yeah.
It was, there are some people I don't have it offhand who are from that kinder 10,000. Dr. Ruth is actually was one of those children, and others there. But he didn't. Yeah, they met much later. Actually, many of the children, who were sent out were actually angry at their parents because to them they didn't understand the whole thing. It was like they were being abandoned. They were just, they were on their own, but the parents were saving their lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just before we move on, just on this subject of the Holocaust, anti-Semitism, and now here we are again, and 2024 with civilization, we clearly see what's happening, but propaganda is so intense. What's your take? Just speak into this current American universities that are basically marching for the annihilation of the Jews, just in open public spaces.
Yeah.
And a lot of our kids, or maybe your grandkids that are on university campuses, they're getting fed this propaganda.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, and that's the future. Those who are in colleges are the future leaders of America. So where is this going to go? When they were, on one hand it can be shocking. On the other hand, biblically it's totally all there because the Bible says there's a reason for this. The Jewish people, God created them to be witnesses of his existence. Whether they believe in him or not, they are witnesses of his existence. And so, therefore, there's another side. There is a dark side. There is an enemy. And so the enemy is going to do everything he can to destroy the Jewish people. You want to understand Jewish history, it's spiritual because it makes no sense in the natural. Why are these people so, hated no matter when and where? For, ancient times, modern times, medieval times, no matter by the communists, by every possible realm of society. Doesn't it? The left, the right, hating the Jewish people. And the reasons always change. Now they're saying, well, Israel is colonial, which is ridiculous, but doesn't matter. The charges always change because behind it is the enemy. In the book of Revelation, this actually goes to the next book, which it's coming out in September, but the dragon's prophecy. In Revelation, it talks about the dragon, and he is persecuting. The word in Greek actually is persecuting the woman. And the woman, in past times they say, well, that's the church. Well, no, it's Israel. It has the 12 stars. It's the same imagery given by Joseph's dream. And so he persecutes the woman because the woman, or Israel, represents God in the world. They brought the word to the world. They brought Messiah to the world. And so he hates them for that. And he knows that when they come back, and when they come back to Israel, when they come back to the land, someone else is coming back to the land.
Yeah.
And so he's going to do everything he can to stop that.
Yeah.
So, and when Israel comes back, so all that anti-Semitism, that satanic, look at, when you think about Hitler, what's the most satanic movement? It's Nazism. It's no accident that he was obsessed with the Jews. And so was Stalin, so was Saddam Hussein, so was Osama bin Laden, so is Hamas. It's all satanic, and they're obsessed with the Jews. So on one hand, it's not surprising. We're just witnessing a little an eruption of a 4,000-year-old war. That's not going to stop. It has a little time. You might say, okay, things seem okay. It never stays. It always comes back because it is spiritual, and this really proves God, and it proves that it proves the enemy exists, and it proves God exists. But the bigger picture in all this, and when you put all that together, and the Jewish people for 2,000 years had no army, they were scattered as sheep, they had no protection, and yet all hell trying to wipe them out for other reasons. And yet with all that, and all the powers that tried to destroy them are gone, but the nation of Israel lives because the God of Israel lives. So that's the other side of it.
Yeah.
The enemy can't win no matter what he does.
Yeah. Man, now you've piqued like 10 questions in my head. So I want to stay here just for a moment and go down this lane. Okay, so current events right now in Israel Hezbollah on the north. We have Gaza still going on and Hamas. You see World War III right now? What are you sensing? What in the world is going to happen? Or what do you think? What's your take on current events?
Well, ultimately there will be world war over this, and so whether this is the one that's going to lead to it, Hezbollah is much more dangerous than Hamas. I mean, they're both satanic, but Hezbollah is armed to the hilt with missiles that can strike any part of Israel. So Israel really doesn't want that. I mean, they're armed by Iran, but they're a much more dangerous force. But Israel is also not going to let them just do what they want. Hezbollah has been firing missiles in continuously.
Right.
And so actually Israel evacuated the north. Thousands and thousands of families have been moved out because of the missiles. But Israel will strike back. They don't want a war. I don't know that Hezbollah wants a war either. But Hezbollah wants it. They all want to destroy Israel one way or the other. But ultimately, the next gigantic event prophetically is Ezekiel 38 and 39, which talks about a whole alliance of nations.
That's the Gog and Magog.
Gog and
right?
Magog, yeah, and it definitely includes Iran without any question. It's amazing. I mean, Iran is right there in the Bible, and called Persia, but now called Iran. And every nation that it mentions now either have been sworn enemies of Israel or are generally against the existence of Israel, from Turkey and others of that. So that's the next thing. Whether this leads to that or not, directly or indirectly, that's the next big event.
Wow. Okay, one more thing, just on Jerusalem and Israel centric. The idea in the scriptures, we're talking about the book of Revelation, end times, Jesus returning. Before Jesus returns, it seems, 2 Thessalonians 2, that there has to be a functioning Jewish temple in Jerusalem. Is that you would agree with that?
Yes. Yeah.
What's your sense on what you hear coming out of Jerusalem from Orthodox Judaism as far as the energy and the money and even the politics to make such a thing happen?
Yeah, it says it won't happen until this is set up in the holy place, is what Paul speaks about, the abomination.
Yeah.
In Revelation, the abomination, so that has to happen in the temple. So there has to be a temple. Israel has never gone back to the land without it building a temple. Never.
And they haven't had a temple since 70 AD, right?
Yeah, 70 AD is when it was destroyed.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. So it has to happen. Now the thing is, but the enemy is in there. The enemy knows that. So that's why the enemy, if you go to the Temple Mount, he has marked out. He's put every obstacle he could. He has the Dome of the Rock, the Mosque of Omar, where you have the third quote holiest site in Islam right on the temple. And then if you go to the Eastern Gate where it says Messiah is actually going to walk through, it's all sealed up. The Muslims sealed it up to stop the Messiah. And they have a graveyard there because the Jewish people are not supposed to walk past dead things. And they have cannons on the other side pointing out
cannons.
Cannon like that's going to stop the Messiah. Yeah. So, but the amazing thing is, it says in Ezekiel that gate will be in a sense sealed, or will not be. No one will go through until the Messiah is. So by trying to stop prophecy, they fulfill prophecy. That's what happens. That's how it works if we have any tries.
Yeah.
So the thing is that, so for Israel to consider building a temple, the government is not considering that. There are movements to do that. There are the Temple Mount.
But on the government, am I right that in the government of Israel, I mean, you have Arab representation, Islamic representation. You also have Orthodox Jews that are being represented in the Knesset,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So surely they're voicing for it, right?
Some of them in the Knesset or even maybe in the cabinet would want that.
But most of them are like, no way, we're not going to do that.
They know, because if they do anything on the Temple Mount, they do anything. If they set up an ice cream stand, there's going to be a world war.
It's going to be a war.
No matter what, because it's caused the enemy. If they do anything on that mount, and so actually in recent times, there's been Jewish prayers on that mount, which they never allow Jewish prayers.
Because if you're a Jew, are you even allowed to go up there? You are.
Yeah, I've been on. When I do tours, I lead people on the mount all the time. We've been kicked out more, at one time, not for being Jewish, but for they thought we were a threat. But they don't like Jewish people being there. But Israel is in charge of the Temple Mount.
Right.
But they gave it over. They made a decision, probably a very bad decision, after the 6-Day War, to give the regular control of the mount into the hands of the Muslim authorities. Right. So even though they're overseeing it, they give it to them, and the Muslim authorities don't allow a Bible. They will not allow a prayer to be spoken. They will not allow a million things. But actually, I shouldn't say this on here. Okay, no. I can't say what I do on the Temple Mount because there could be a world war.
Okay.
So we don't want to do that. We don't want to start that from
No.
Grace Church.
No, we don't.
So
We have enough going on. We're good. Thank you.
So there, you got enough things to deal with, right?
Yeah, right.
So we, so the thing is that there is a movement to happen. There is a movement. They have recreated the temple vessels, the menorah, the other things. They are training priests, the sons of Aaron, to learn how to do the things. They are doing it, but they can't do anything unless the government does it. In fact, I won't go into it. I put this in the next book. But what happened? This whole thing that's happened October 7th when they invaded Israel. Everything that's happened since, it all actually began with something that happened on the Temple Mount. It was actually spiritual. What happened? It was the enemy responding to the Temple Mount.
Wow.
This very thing that we're talking about.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So for those of you that aren't really familiar, when you go to Jerusalem, in Old City, Jerusalem, the Temple Mount would be the historic area where the temple was at. Like when you read the Gospels and Jesus is in Jerusalem and engaging in the temple, this massive area. How big do you think it is? We're talking several football fields.
Yeah,
right?
that's
massive
about,
area.
Yeah.
And on there is the third most holiest spot of Islam. It's called the Dome of the Rock. Whenever you see pictures of Jerusalem, you'll see this big, shiny gold dome. Well, that's not Jewish. That's Islamic, a place of Islam. And then actually just in front of it is another holy place of Islam. And so for the Jews to be able to build a temple there is a huge issue.
Yeah, so something has to happen. I mean, it's going to happen. I mean, we were talking, God always does it.
Yeah, something has to happen in order for the Bible to be right.
It looked impossible for Israel to come back in the world. It was under Muslim authority, under the Turkish Empire.
Yeah.
It was impossible same way. But God did it. It looked impossible that they would ever have Jerusalem. That was under the authority of Jordan. But the 6-day war, it happened. God's going to have it happen no matter what. And it's possible that Ezekiel 38 and 39, which talks about this gigantic invasion of Israel, and God moving, God showing himself, says, then Israel will know that I am the Lord, at that time. And the world will know. So it's going to be very dramatic. When that happens, I believe that Israel will say, okay, we don't care anymore. This is God. Our God is real. Our God is here. And we have not built the temple yet. So we're going to build the temple. Now, if you look, they're all going to be reading Ezekiel 38 and 39. And the next chapter is about the temple. So I believe, if something doesn't happen before, it's going to take something gigantic like that for that to happen. But it will happen.
Wow. Okay, so back to Purdue. We're back to Purdue University. Your mom and dad meet. They get married. You have two sisters. Your journey then, your parents, you said, weren't really religious, but they were culturally Jews. What does that even mean? Because St. Louis has a fairly, big Jewish population. Lots of Jews that are culturally Jews, but not religious Jews. Tell us a
most
little
Jewish
bit.
people in America are not religious, like observant. They may believe in God, they may not believe in God. But they are Jewish. Because, see, being Jewish is two things. It's faith on one hand, and I would say the true faith of Israel is the faith we have right here, which has gone out to everyone in Messiah. But the other is a people. They're a people. God created them of flesh and blood. So they are both. So even if they have faith or don't have faith, they are still Israel, in flesh and blood. So most Jewish people in America are not very religious. There are the Orthodox who are religious, are observant, according to the Torah and the rabbis. They don't pretty much do a lot with the rest of it. It's the first 5 books. They still try to keep the law, and they study the rabbis. They don't so much look at the prophets and all that.
They wear the hats. They have, they're
the
full-blown garb.
The ultra-Orthodox have the full thing, like that. That goes back to Poland. It has nothing to do with the Bible. That's what they were wearing in Poland. But the yarmulkes, the regular Orthodox will have yarmulkes, and that's them.
Okay. Ben
Shapiro, others have that.
Okay.
So I grew up in a typical Jewish home in that sense, that my father would go to temple, synagogue. We would go there on the high holy days, on the Feast of Trumpets and Yom Kippur, not for other things, but I was sent to Hebrew school, so I went to Hebrew school 3 times a week to learn all those things. And we celebrated Passover at home, and we celebrated Hanukkah at home, and that's pretty much. And we knew we were Jewish. And what does Jewishness mean? Well, you don't believe in Jesus, then you're Jewish. That's pretty much. It's dependent on Jesus.
Yeah.
So that's.
And did that like come up like when you're in Hebrew school? Like did the subject of Jesus ever come up, or was it just avoided?
It might come up because you're in a Christian culture, and so it's Christmas. It might come up by talking different things, but the weird thing is, growing up, I was also there at the time I was a kid at the time of the Jesus movement, and so, or in the 70s, and so when we heard about Jesus, it was Jesus Christ Superstar. It was, it was the songs on the radio. There was actually And so we thought Jesus was cool. We thought Jesus was like a hippie. He's a cool guy. You know, we thought he was cool. It was Christianity that we had the problem with from what we knew. Because what we knew, and this is again the devil's work, and what we knew is that in the name of Jesus, Jewish people were hated in the name of Jesus, were persecuted in the name of Jesus, were killed, and then not because of any real Christian, but because of people who used the name. And for 2,000 years, much of the people, because most people who call themselves Christians weren't Christians.
Right.
And the enemy uses that. So it's kind of like, you know, it's to take something beautiful that they need, their Messiah, and make him appear like it is a horrible thing. That's why there's such a, you know, that's one of the reasons why there's been such a wall. You got to break through that wall. So we thought, you know, Jesus was good. It's just the other stuff, you know. And then I thought there were Catholics and Protestants and there were Christians. That in my mind as a kid, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Wow. Okay, so then you're going through all of that, and then how in the world did you all of a sudden encounter Jesus as, okay, the Jewish Messiah?
Yeah, well, it wasn't all of a sudden, but what happened was when I was in Hebrew school, I was learning about the God of Israel who spoke and moved and, you know, and talked to his prophets and you know, the Spirit of God. But I didn't see any of that in the synagogue. You know, it was all liturgy. The rabbi never got up and said, "Hey, God spoke to me and God's in my life." It was ritual, you know. And so when I became an atheist when I was 8 years old. And I said, "Well, there's no God. You know, how do we know there's a God? I don't see any sign of him here." And that lasted for a while, but you know, I was known in school. I would argue, you know, with religious people. But as I went on, I said, "What, atheism doesn't work." I started losing faith in atheism. And that doesn't work.
You started losing faith in atheism.
Yeah, it doesn't
like
work because there's got to be a reason.
You got to have a lot of faith to believe in atheism.
That's right. Either way, yeah. So I said, there's got to be a reason. We can't exist for no reason. There's got to be a reason, a cause. So I started searching. I started getting books every time. Like now, I'm like 12, 13 years old. Books on everything. Books on science. Books on religion. Books on the occult. Books on Nostradamus. Books on UFOs. Everything. Everything. And one day I picked up a book. I looked at a book. I was in a store. It looked like it was a UFO book because they made it look like that year. And it wasn't a UFO book. It was The Late Great Planet Earth by Hal Lindsey, which is all about biblical prophecy. And the thing is that, but I said, God tricked me, you know, because it looked just like that. I was getting anything that looked like that. So look at in the back it said, "Is this the generation that Jesus and I'm thinking, okay, but I've read about Jesus in every book. I mean, everybody talks about Jesus. So God kind of opened me up to what was more than natural through the back door. So I'm reading this. I'm like, wow, I had no idea the Bible said this, said Israel will come back, and all these things that are happening. I had no idea of this.
Were you familiar with the New Testament at all?
Not really. I mean, just, you know, familiar.
Bits and pieces.
Christmas and, you know, just knowing things, some things that way. But so I'm reading this, and then I said, okay, let me check it out. So I go to our Bible. The Bible we have is the Hebrew Bible. It doesn't have the New Testament. And I'm reading all about the prophecies and all this that are coming true, and it is all there. But I also am reading about other prophecies. It talks about the Messiah. And it says the Messiah will be born in Bethlehem. I think, Bethlehem, that's Catholic. How did that get in our Bible, you know? And then I'm reading, it says that he's going to ride on a donkey in Jerusalem. That's Palm Sunday. I knew that. He's going to die for sins, Isaiah 53. He said, how did the Catholics get in there? You know, so I'm trying to figure it out. And I said, this is definitely, there's only one person, and that is this Jesus, Yeshua, only one. And so I'm coming, you know, it's like a, this is over 6 years, but I'm believing, I'm excited about it. But, you know, and at the same time, I was still reading, there's Nostradamus, there's the Bible. I said, then I'm reading and saying, no, only the Bible has the authority, speaks with this authority. There's nothing else like it. And so I'm telling my friends about it, you know, and I'm winning them to the Lord. I'm not saved, but I'm winning them to the Lord.
Your Jewish friends, or just normal, other friends or Jewish friends?
The normal friends.
Okay, the normal.
Jewish and normal. Okay, I get it. I get it.
That was bad. We're going to edit that part out.
Anti-Semitism here in Grace Church, but we're not going to go into it.
So, Gentiles, those Gentile guys.
Yes. So they're coming to the Lord. And so I'm, you know, as time goes on, I'm saying, okay, this is, you know, it's not just, you can't just be telling people about this. It, you know, it was all kind of narrowing on Jesus and Yeshua. And so, to me, I never had a problem being, I knew this was Jewish. I never felt more Jewish. Like, well, now this is the purpose why we're here. There's a reason to be a light to the world. That's why we're supposed to be there. Right. So that was all good. I knew that, but I didn't want to live it. I thought if I follow him, I have to join a monastery, become a monk, and that's the end of my life. That's what I thought. So I was doing what teenagers do. I had a rock band. I had all this stuff, and I didn't want to give it up. So finally I made a deal with God because I knew I had to, but I didn't want to. So I made a deal, and I said, Lord, if you give me a long life, I will accept you when I'm on my deathbed. That was the deal. And so soon after I prayed that prayer, I was almost killed. I was in a car accident with one person who I helped come to the Lord, and it was a miracle that we weren't killed. I said, okay, I didn't think much about it. You know, a number of months later, I'm in a Ford Pinto, which for those, you're dating yourself, but if you know what a Ford Pinto, they would blow up. If you looked at them the wrong way, they would blow up. If you hurt their feelings, they would blow up. They were dangerous. So I'm in a Ford Pinto, and it's nighttime. I'm heading to college, and I'm heading to a train track. And it's dark. There had just been a snowstorm. You couldn't tell where. And it was an intersection where there was no protection, and there was and people had been actually hit, killed on there. And it came out on an angle. You couldn't tell. It was just two rails, and the road was all broken up, so you couldn't tell where. I'm heading to the track, and the light is going on as if the train is coming. But all the other cars on the other side are crossing with the light on. I'm thinking, all right, it's either the train passed or it's broken. I said, but I'm not going to cross unless I know. So I move up, and I look up, and I see a light, and it doesn't look like it's moving. It was the train. It didn't look like it was because it was coming head on. I'm on the track. And I'm waiting, and I said, you know what? Maybe I'm too close. I couldn't tell because of the way I said, maybe I'm too close.
Wow.
So I start trying to back up, but I look in the rearview mirror, and there are headlights in back of me. So the train is coming. There's headlights in back of me. I back up about a foot, and I think I'm just being extra safe, you know. I was still in the path of the train. So the train came and smashed into the Pinto, and the car went up like aluminum foil. And the only thing I could do at that moment was call out to God. I called out to God. The car was destroyed, and I didn't get a scratch. So I knew I had to pray again.
I mean, it seems like the Lord was taking that deathbed seriously.
He was bringing that deathbed real close.
Yeah.
You know, real close. I knew. I said that was strike two. You know, strike three. What's it? You know, an asteroid. I don't know what's going to happen. So I knew that. So I approached the Lord in prayer, and I said, Lord, can we renegotiate? I have a new deal for you. I will accept you. I will follow you when I'm 20. I said, it's a much better deal because it's much sooner. 20.
Because you're 19 at the time.
I wanted as much time as I could get. So I said, Lord, just don't kill me until then. And so what happened is on my 20th birthday, I gave my word. And so it was like a contract. I gave my word to the Lord. So on that day, I said, okay, I have to now. I wasn't in church. You know, I was listening to Christian radio. And so I said, like, okay, I need to get saved. And so I remember from Hebrew school, Moses and Elijah met God on mountaintops. So I said, let me find a mountain. So I find a mountain, and it was actually overlooking the Hudson River. And I drive up at night. I've never been there before. I get to the very top, and there's a flat rock, a tree and a flat rock. I kneel down on the rock, and on the mountain, I gave my life to the Lord. That's how I came to the Lord. It says, you know, the Bible says that Jews require signs. I required a train, you know. And I thank God, because without that train, I don't know if I'd be saved. You know, I'd still be saying I'm making a deal, but God uses that, you know. And it turned out years later, I met the Lord, and my life changed from that moment on, you know. And I was in the middle of college and had to decide what to do, you know. And so God just interrupted me at that exact moment. But the thing is that you know, we were sharing at lunch. I'm descended from Aaron. You know, Cahn means priest. It's descended from Aaron. And years later, I'm looking at the Bible, and it's talking about the Temple of Jerusalem. And when they had the priests of Aaron, and they decreed that the sons of Aaron would begin serving the Lord when they turned 20. I had no idea. I was just going for time and made a deal, but God is in charge of all things. Yeah.
That is amazing. So, because you're in New York, so you were raised upstate New York. That's where you were raised. All that. Your mom is still there. Sister's still there. Okay, so at 20 years old, you really do make a contract with the Lord. You get born again. Are you okay to share that story? I think it was recent.
When I came back?
No, the one where the lady brought the picture to you.
Okay. Yeah, years later, I decided to return to the mountain where I came to the Lord. And in the meantime, this is 20 years later, and it's on the 20th birthday. Again, the 20th anniversary. And I had, in that time, the Lord had led me through the nations, and I always ended up on a mountain. And I always ended up a mountain where there were like gods or satanic things, and it's like a showdown. This happened in almost every place. Anyway, so I said, let me go back to the place where I came to the Lord. So I go back. It's nighttime. I have a Bible. I have a flashlight. I have a shofar, the trumpet, and I have a prayer shawl. I just want to have time. I just want to give thanks to God for everything he did in my life. So I get there. I find the rock. I kneel down, and I have a great time with the Lord. And I have a Bible, and I open up the Bible. And and I'm not saying that every time you open up the Bible, God's going to do it, but you know that he does do that at times. We all have that. So I open up the Bible just to read something, and it says, it's about Jacob returning to the place, the mountain where he came to the Lord, where Bethel, where he had that dream, where everything happened, his life was changed. And that's cool. I open it again, and it says, the enemy says, I have your mountain. I'm thinking, the enemy says, I have your mountain? I'm on a mountain. No idea what that means. But anyway, I'm praising God, had a great time, sounded the shofar, all that. Next morning, I'm doing a service. It's Sunday, and a woman is waiting online at the end, and she says, I know it's your birthday, because it was my birthday. It's my spiritual birthday. So she says, I have a gift for you. And she bought a gift in a store. She bought a framed picture, a drawing, and I look at it. It's a man standing on a mountaintop with a shofar, with a trumpet, and the prayer cloth. I said, that was me last night. I was on the mountain with she said, really? I said, yeah, I returned to the mountain where I came to the Lord. And she says, what mountain? I said, I have no idea the name of the mountain. I just went up. I have no idea. She says, no, tell me. I told her where it is. She says, I know that mountain. I said, really? She says, yeah, I live at the bottom of it. I said, really? She says, do you know what that mountain is? I said, no. I said, that mountain is dedicated to Satan. I said, Satan? I said, I got saved on the top of it. And she said, I said, where? I said, well, I kneel down on this flat rock. She said, that's the altar. When you talk about normal, many people, most of you got saved in a church or in a nice place, is air conditioned, and I get saved on a satanic mountaintop. They said, and the thing is that I knew it was not going to be a regular walk, and the thing is, and I remember then there was this mystery, God kind of speaks with me of mysteries, and it was waiting on the mountaintop. I remember it made no sense. There were words written. It said, no Jew shall enter these sacred grounds. And I said, I thought, who would write that? Nazis? Who would write that? Satan would, through his worshiper. Because for 2,000 years, he's been keeping Jewish people from their sacred mountain, for the Lord, for their salvation from Calvary. I said, too late, Satan. This one is in. This Jew is in. Back with the Messiah. Too late. And...
Wow.
So this is what the enemy has been trying for, so long. And and it turned out, well, there's much more, there's more to the mystery, but that was on the 20th anniversary. That took 20 years for the Lord to reveal that to me.
Tell us a little bit about your church. What do you do? Beth Israel is the name of it. Tell the history of it. Tell us a little bit about kind of the function and some of the ministry, outreach, stuff like that.
When I was saved, I was in college, and the Lord interrupted my life supernaturally and said, I basically have called you for ministry, and you got to, and I did at the time, I checked out Jews for Jesus, I checked out Joseph, but none of it was the one. And so at the same time, when I was graduating college, I had to decide what to do. One of my friends, a Messianic believer who came to the Lord, called me up. He said, "We're starting this congregation. It's like an outreach of this church. We're starting it up, and we want you to help. We want you." I said, "Well, Lord called me to ministry, so I know I'm going to have to leave for that ministry, but I'll help you in the meantime." So I helped. I was like the number 3 leader. I was there. I led worship and all that stuff. And so about 4 years later, I was doing, I won't go into it, but the Lord had me doing all sorts of stuff in ministry. But so about 4 years later, the guy who was leading it left. The pastor left. And so my friend asked me, he said, "We're asking you to lead it." I said, "No, this was just for the meantime. I was there to help you." No, he said, "Well, maybe this is the ministry." So I prayed. I said, "Lord, I know I'm not supposed to give you." They say don't give fleeces to the Lord. I don't know where that's in the Bible. But I said, "But Lord, I'm giving you 6 fleeces, and you got to do them all by the end of the month. If you want this, if you want that." And he did every single one of them by the end of the month. Wow. So I said yes. So it had about 30 people, and then it was Beth Israel. It met on Friday nights. And then, in that year, it tripled, and then it grew and grew and grew. And we found, and so Beth Israel, it meets on Friday night, and it meets on Sunday morning. It's two different services.
In New Jersey, right?
In Wayne, New Jersey, which is about 20 minutes from New York City.
Okay.
And so Friday nights and Sunday mornings, it's 2 different services. I do, 2 different messages I'll do. When we have the holidays, we'll celebrate the holidays in Jesus. It's like a United Nations of people. Every tribe and tongue is there. Jewish people are there. Non-Jewish people are there. And it's, for non-Jewish people come for, it's their, if you're born again, you're Jewish. You're spiritually Jewish. That's what the Bible says. So it's your roots as well. So people come for that as well. So if you go there, the place is called the Jerusalem Center, the building. It looks like Jerusalem. If you're there, it's like you're in Jerusalem, the walls and the gates and all that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Tell us a little bit about your family. Brag on your boys for a second. And your wife, because you just had an anniversary last
Start
week.
with my wife. Yeah. We were talking last night. I didn't think I was going to be married because when you're a single pastor, there were a lot of women who heard from the Lord they were supposed to marry me. And so I don't have the calling of Solomon, so we're not going there. So you become very protective, very cautious. And so I said, Lord, and I was on some dangerous mission. So I said, maybe Lord, you just don't want me to be married. So I finally said, okay, I'm all right with it now, And that year she shows up, and she's from Brazil. And when she we courted for about 5 years, so it took it very slow. But the thing is, when she was a teenager, she was in church, and she's a believer prayed over her and said, there's a man across the world. He's Jewish. He's from the tribe of Levi. And he ministers around the world, sound the shofar. You're going to be his wife. Prepare. You're his helpmate. Start preparing. A few months later, another believer prays over her, says, there's a man across the world. He's Jewish. He's from the tribe of Levi. Same thing. A few months later, a third believer says the same exact thing. And so it happens, and she's studying, and so she ends up, so she's studying about actually how the Levites help the priest. She has some Levite blood in her. She's part Jewish, but then nothing happened. So she figured, okay, years went by, nothing. She's in America with a friend. She says, could you know of any Messianic congregation? The friend says, yeah. She says, I go to one on Friday night. So she takes her to Beth Israel. And as soon as she saw him, I was walking around. You didn't know I was the pastor or rabbi. I'm just walking around. And she says, I know that guy. He's been to Brazil. I've seen him. I know him. So he's never been to Brazil. So, well, how do I know him? One of the words said, when you see him, you're going to know it. You're going to know it. And she never would ever tell me the words that were spoken. I found out another way when I was in Brazil. But the thing is that the interesting thing is, so we got married. 3 years we had a courtship. The fourth year we got engaged on the mountain, the same mountain where I found the Lord. and the fifth year we got married. Now the interesting thing is, when I was born again, she was born. And the name they gave her was Renata, which means born again. So she was born when I was born again, And then I met the Lord when I was 20. She met me when she turned 20. Wow. The Lord has every moment, in his hands.
And three boys.
Sorry, three boys. Oldest one is 14, named Eliel, which means God is my God. My God is God. The second one is Diel, who's 12, means the knowledge of God. And the youngest one is 5, and he's Mishael, and his name means who is that which God